All right. So Greg's gonna stay up there and he's gonna be joined by Leesa Gratreak. Do I pronounce that right?
Yes, Leesa Gratreak.
Who is a resident of the Linwood neighborhood? Am I right?
Yeah, Linwood neighborhood.
Linwood neighborhood. And she's a historian by profession, and they are going to do a little bit of background for the Historic Preservation Month proclamation. And I don't know who's going first.
Go first, and then we can switch spots.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, while they're setting up, Leesa is leading a tour of downtown Milwaukee. She did one last month and it was awesome. It goes through downtown and through part of historic Milwaukee, looking at historic structures and talking about the significance of the building. And the reprise of it is on June 10th?
Yes, June 10th, there'll be an encore.
Yes.
And I am hoping to potentially have a third time as well that we'll allocate, but we'll just see. We'll see how popular it is. The first one sold out. We're hoping for a good turnout for this next one. It is through the Architectural Heritage Center, which is a nonprofit organization that is based in Portland. I volunteer with the Architectural Heritage Center. I'm here in my volunteer capacity. I'm not like formally, as the Architectural Heritage Center. However, I do volunteer with them, and that includes the tour in Milwaukee.
Great. All right, Mr. Hemer.
Mayor Betty, Mayor Beatty, City Council, and City staff, thank you for having Milwaukee Historical Society, the owners and operators of the world's largest museum dedicated to the city of Milwaukee's history. Milwaukee Museum opens Saturdays 11 to 4 p.m. at 3737 Southeast Adams Streets. Are proud to present tonight's proclamation for May 2023 Historic Preservation Month. My name is Greg Hemer, the Communications Director. Change happens every day in our lives, our community, and in the universe. Without change, life would be boring or even non-existent. But our past, like historic buildings, help tell our story, where we began and what to either repeat or to do better in the future. Our last exhibit and book, entitled Then and Now, displays photographs of a time gone by side with what it looks like today. For example, this slide you're seeing is from Milwaukee 1955 on the left and Milwaukee 2022 on the right. Look at the tree canopy between the two. But also in this photograph, you can see some iconic structures like the Portland Waldorf School, Hager Pond, the Strebe House, the William Schindler Building, just to name a few. These symbols of Milwaukee are reminding of us of days gone by, preserving Milwaukee's history for future generations, fostering local pride, encouraging local economic growth, being environmentally responsible, all while enhancing livability. To help preserve and raise interest about our historical, interesting, and even amazing buildings, Milwaukee Historical Society held a 2019 historical home tour in the Island Station neighborhood. We also have a program to explore your home's history. For a small fee, our crack team of investigators will provide you all the deeds and owners from the donation land claim to you, the current owner. Now, our most exciting news is that we have started the process of completing our historic home inventory, which is required by our comprehensive plan. Our hard work team, our dedicated volunteers, will complete the project by the end of 2024. As always, because you know me, Milwaukee Museum will hand over the report to the city, and the professionalism will allow it to be a completed project, saving the government money, not having to hire a consultant to do the work. Thank you for letting us address you again tonight. And Ms. Mayor, after the presentation, please read the proclamation.
We'll switch off and let Leesa.
Switch ones.
give us a little bit about historic preservation.
Correct. So I figured it was fitting if we're going to talk about preservation. Obviously, there's a lot of wonderful things going on in our community preservation-wise, but I think it would be nice to just give a little background on preservation so you can understand, first of all, where it's come from, which kind of helps us understand where it's going. And also, something I truly feel is very important is to understand that preservation is really about sustainability and that holistic approach. So I just want to give an introduction to those topics. And thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate it.
I think you have to run like this because if you do full screen mode, again, it goes off the page. So you should still be able to use the arrows. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, we're good.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. So historic preservation has had a long, rich history in the U.S. with a lasting impact on the built environment. Its impact and legacy are seen in the restoration of buildings and structures, as well as in the historic trails, railroads, and highways that we continue to use every day. Historic preservation is all around us. In order to better understand how the field of historic preservation evolved over time, let's start with a quick timeline. So, considered the first historic preservation group in the United States, the Mount Vernon Ladies Association was started in 1856 with the goal of preserving George Washington's estate. This represents the early formation of preservation advocacy, which was focused on high architecture and birthplaces of nationally important figures. The 1906 Antiquities Act was the first U.S. law to provide general legal protection of cultural and natural resources of historic or scientific interest on federal lands. Though not really comprehensive, it laid the groundwork for future legislation and protections on federal lands, as well as the National Park System. In 1935, the Habs and Hare programs, the Historic American Building Survey and Historic American Engineering Record, were established through the Historic Sites Act. The Historic Sites Act was established to promote a national policy of preservation for public use of historic sites, buildings, and objects of national significance for the inspiration and benefit of the people of the United States. This was really the beginning of the hands-on preservation movement and a strong shift in efforts from formal preservation of, again, these architecturally significant high architecture sites to sites that are more important to the American people. In 1966, both the National Historic Preservation Act and Department of Transportation Act were established, which created the entire legal framework that supports the modern historic preservation field today. They require that projects consider historic properties early in the planning process. In 1969, the National Environmental Policy Act was passed, which also requires projects to consider historic resources and more formally concreted historic properties as valuable resources within their natural environment. Historic preservation promotes sustainability through the reuse of materials, retention of community character and pride, and creation of good jobs. It promotes the holistic approach to sustainability through consideration of economic, social, and environmental factors. The economic impacts include tax incentives, grants, conservation easements, and increases in retention of property value. It also includes heritage tourism and community revitalization, which bring people to our community and to our businesses. Regulatory relief also allows zoning and building codes to be eased to allow historic elements to be grandfathered in. Lastly, preservation creates good, local, high-paying jobs. The environmental benefits to historic preservation are tangible and real, like the reuse of wood flooring or the rehabilitation of existing wood windows. They are also intangible or less visible, such as reducing our dependence on vinyl and other toxic building materials, as well as limiting the dioxins and PCBs in our waterways, soil, and air. You can buy a homeowner a new window and they will eventually need a new one. If you teach a homeowner how to repair their window and install a storm window on the outside, they will have windows for life. The greenest building is the one that already exists. This is just one example by the numbers. Adding a storm window to an existing wood window can achieve an average U value of 0.5, and a hint here, smaller numbers are better, with an average payback of about 4.5 years through the cost savings of installing that exterior storm. Purchasing a new window with a 0.5 UV value, which is considered pretty mid-value high energy window, and throwing out that old window would have a payback of about 40 years. With a slightly better UV, if you get the real top of the market stuff, and you keep that UV down really, really low, it's going to come down to 34 years. However, if a wood window already has a storm window installed on the exterior and you remove both and put them into the landfill and upgrade to a super efficient new window, it's going to take 240 years to make up the cost of that window. So people don't understand that even if you are going to save money on your bill, if that savings is very, very small or equal to or negligible to an update that would have retained the windows, you've now thrown away materials, put in new materials that aren't going to last as long, and it's never going to make its money back. So preservation allows for flexible options that work with multiple budgets to achieve similar sustainability goals. It also promotes repair over replacement, which I believe really empowers homeowners to take care of their own buildings. Lastly, historic preservation promotes community pride and sense of place, encourages variety in the building stock and housing cost options, and allows for doubling economic incentives by combining low-income tax credits with historic preservation tax credits. Historic properties can be reused in such a way that really benefits the community as a whole. I just want to say that I love Milwaukee and I believe this place matters. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I guess with that, I will read the proclamation. Whereas the preservation of historic places is an effective tool for revitalizing neighborhoods, fostering local pride, and maintaining community character while enhancing livability. And whereas preservation and reuse of historic buildings is inherently sustainable and environmentally sound. And whereas since 1973, the National Trust for Historic Preservation and countless other communities across the United States have marked May as an annual time to reflect on the importance of preserving places that reflect America's history. And whereas modern-day Milwaukie, established in 1847 on the historic homeland of the Clackamas people, encompasses a range of potentially historic buildings from late pioneer era structures through Victorian, Craftsman, and other historic eras and styles to exceptional mid-century architecture. And whereas residents of Milwaukie and the many volunteers of the Milwaukie Historical Society have helped raise awareness of historic resources and buildings in our community, including launching the first historic home tour in 2019, working with fellow residents realizing their homes history, and striving toward completing Milwaukee's historic home inventory list by 2024. And whereas the preservation of historic places has a positive impact on communities by strengthening neighborhoods, encouraging local economic growth, providing a physical link to the past, and by being environmentally responsible. Now, therefore, I, Leesa Beatty, Mayor of the City of Milwaukie, a municipal corporation in the County of Clackamas in the state of Oregon, do hereby proclaim May 2023 as Historic Preservation Month in Milwaukie to increase public understanding of the importance of preserving our history for future generations. Thank you, guys. Guys.